Welcome to the Room of Lives. I'm your host, Neil. In this third part of my conversation with neuroscience student May, she talks about her habit of walking into people's mind mansions, opening doors, looking at things, and rearranging them. She talks about how people have responded to this and how she has changed the way that she does it to be more balanced and gentle.
That's why I like people so much. I love sharing, and I love touching their little mind palaces and like roaming around inside. And I'm like, oh my god, I love what you've done to the place. And then
Yeah, I love what you've done with the place.
sometimes I had a partner once call me like a bit of a brain ninja.
Brain ninja.
She called me a brain ninja. Yes,
What's that?
because she was like, you walk into people's little mansions, and they don't even know that they've let you in sometimes, and then you just start opening doors, and you walk into rooms that they didn't know they had, that they didn't know that you weren't allowed to go into. They were closed off, and you just walk in and you're just like observing the scenery, and you're loving it in them. And sometimes you're moving things that they didn't ask you to move, but you're like, oh, I think this vase fits better here, and it was.
Do people ever react negatively to
Sometimes
that?
yes, and they don't know why sometimes. Like actually, before we started dating, she found herself very like enticed and entranced interacting with me, but also I think she felt kind of afraid, and she didn't know why she felt afraid. And I think it was because she was a very private person. She liked to keep her things to herself, and I would walk in and I would figure things out that she didn't choose to show me, that weren't my right to know. And it's not like I was snooping into her life. Like, it wasn't like, I think that this analogy could look negative very easily. It wasn't like I was like spying on her, reading her text. Like, it wasn't being manipulative, but it was just like, when you're an insightful person.
I think you walk into a room and you start turning the lights on. You're like, what's over here?
It's like, I'm just looking around. And she felt, in some ways, I think she felt like invaded. Like, she didn't recognize at first what was uncomfortable about it until, maybe a month into us knowing each other. She kind of put it to words. She was like, I didn't actually invite you into that room, and you started to know things about me that I didn't choose to tell you. You just figured them out, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it scared me, and it feels dangerous because that means you have a lot of power over me.
But she had a different upbringing probably, where
totally.
She had to keep part of herself hidden.
Absolutely.
Because it was hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was
scary.
The best relationship I've ever had. It was so generative for us both. She is still one of the most important people to me to this day, and she was willing to tell me that something that I was doing was hurting her, and she didn't know why, and she didn't blame me for it, but she was like, this is hard, and so I became a lot more careful about how I would walk into people's houses.
Are you okay with people doing that? Like,
I let people in. I swing the door wide open.
So there's never a situation where someone comes and walks into a room and it's like, what's over here? Shines a big light.
Oh, there absolutely are. There absolutely are times where people come in.
It's still recording, right? Yeah.
It is still recording. Yeah.
Where you're like, no.
There are times where people walk in and I didn't invite them, and it's rare.
Yeah.
I usually don't mind when people walk in uninvited, but I feel like there are certain rooms that I keep private on purpose, and part of the reason that I'm so willing to let people in is it's like a magic trick. I like do this and you don't see this other thing that I've done. Like I distract your vision so you don't go searching for something under the surface because you think you're seeing already. And so there are like rooms in my mind that one of the ways that I protect myself is by, I'm so open and vulnerable generally that you think that there's nothing that I'm hiding, right? Like, and if I am hiding something, I just make sure never to walk you towards that room. And if I see you walking towards it, I lead you somewhere else new and interesting that I would rather you be.
Yeah, but there are some people with whom this is going to not work because they're going to start picking up.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not the most emotionally
I'm just
intelligent
trying
to
get an understanding of the degree to which you're like really willing to be like completely.
I think I do have a bit of a curated vulnerability. I think it benefits, right? Like I think I've never minded to be an example for people. and showcase the things that I've learned and the ways that I've failed. Like, it goes back to that unshakable confidence, right? Where like, I feel like if I give you something that I've done wrong, it's unlikely that you can use it to hurt me. Because I'm already okay. Like, I'm good. And so a lot of the time, everyone needs something different. But sometimes when people feel stressed or they feel bad or nervous or whatever, what they want is like an example of someone that makes them feel like, oh, it wouldn't be so bad, you know? And so I'll often share the things that are hard for me or unique about me or important to me very openly, because it makes people feel safe to do the same in return. You know, it's hard to be vulnerable if you feel like you're just giving away free information, and like it feels like that person now has a lot of power over you. And so if I give you lots of information about myself and I tell you a lot of things about, you know, what I've done or where I've been or what I care about or whatever, you feel familiar and you feel like you trust and you feel safe because you know that it's not a one-sided interaction, right? And so that you feel more comfortable being vulnerable and being yourself. And this is a way that I like to live. And lately in my life, a lot of people have been coming to me and telling me that it's very inspiring, that this feeling of living freely is infectious, you know, like they're like, you're so unafraid to be the person that you are, and it makes me want to do that. And I'm like, that's great, that is exactly what I want, because I want to be the person that I am. I hate masking, I hate having to pretend, I hate hierarchies, I hate these organizations, I hate the titles, the bullshit. Like, I'm just so over the game, you know, playing the game. I'm like, I just want to be me. I spent 21 years pretending to be someone, you know, building the suit of armor of being a boy. I was like, I'm going to be the best boy that I can be. No one will ever know. No one will ever find out that actually under the surface, I'm not a boy at all. And there were lots of things like that where like I built up these personas that would protect me from anyone seeing in and seeing the true vulnerable stuff. And it was exhausting and so tiresome. And I worked so hard all the time to be the best version of what I thought I was supposed to be. And I never could get there. Like I could, because it wasn't natural to me. And no one can get to perfect, you know, like you're beating yourself up for not being the perfect self. And I was like that a lot. And so when my journey of transition has been this astoundingly freeing experience where like every time I step closer towards who I want to be and who I feel like I am, I couldn't imagine going back. I couldn't imagine hiding those pieces of myself again. And even before then, I was also still very vulnerable as that boy. But again, there were like rooms that were hidden, like the trans room, the things that I knew about myself that were like what it's like to be trans, no one ever got in. No one was allowed to know. And like my whole identity was curated around hiding the fact that this room existed. And making sure no one ever had any suspicion or any idea or whatever, you know. And that was something that felt like if people knew it, it would ruin me. It would ruin my whole life. They would have so much power over me. So I never wanted them to know. And now it's mine. I've claimed it. I live in that room. I bring people in all the time. I'm like, what's up? This is actually my favorite room in my house. So.
And if some of them are like kind of confused, you're like, hey,
I'm
that's
like,
kind of fun.
Bro, just watch this. You won't believe it.
I love it.
Yeah. So I've learned to be more careful about how I walk into people's mind palace. And more gentle with things that I move and touch. I used to be, prior to estrogen especially, like I was a very empathetic person, but I was very like abrasive, I think, to interact with. And I'm still kind of abrasive. Like I'm very like, you know, like I'm a little wrestly. I'm a little like, aggressive's not the right word, but I don't mind roughhousing. You know, like some people are just kind of rough.
You're not, what's the word? Diminutive.
No, I'm not.
You're not at all. I noticed that about
That's
you.
not where I was getting at, but that's still true.
Yeah.
You're saying you noticed something?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that you're not shy about just like, you know, telling people like, hey, I feel like this
how
is...
I felt,
yeah.
what I saw or what I thought.
Yeah.
But I think I used to be very piercing, like without meaning to. Like I didn't, until that partner told me, it made me uncomfortable that you were in my mind palace because I didn't invite you in. I didn't realize how uncomfortable it could be when I would walk in and say something or make a commentary. I'd be like, you know, maybe this would be easier for you if these rooms were rearranged in this way, or if you like painted it this way, or if you put this in here, you know, I would just tell people shit that I
Yeah.
thought about them, and a lot of the time there was
I think
some
the way
truth
that
to
people hear that is like it sometimes touches like a very like kind of
Yeah, it's raw.
a raw wound where
Yeah.
many people have hurt them there,
Insecurity.
and they're like, yeah, you
And it feels like I'm
are. It's like
plucking
a
on
judgment.
some-
You're
yeah.
like, I hate you because of this. You know?
And I never
You
felt
know,
that way.
something
Like
that.
for me,
Yeah.
it felt like love and appreciation. And
Yeah.
and you know, I think prior to transitioning, my mom would kind of say to me sometimes, like, I don't think you're aware of how you come off when you say things to people sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think
Like the little thing that happened the other night where very quickly you were like, Neil, I noticed that your continuation of humor is often violent. And the thing is, I have been thinking about it ever since I came to the US. In India, people have like really very like rough sense of humor.
yeah.
But I think also me particularly also, like my mind goes to a dark place all the time.
Uh-huh.
And if there's like a level of just kind of like brutality in it, I find it kind of funny.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't.
No.
And many people in the United States either don't find my jokes funny or they're like, you know...
They're
that
like
was just-
distressed or off put.
Yeah. And I'm like a little bit butthurt by that. And one part of me is like, dude, they just don't get it. I'm just going to keep doing this, what I'm doing, and this is their fault. But another part of me is like, do I just not see that I'm kind of fucked up?
And so when I said that to you, it kind of made you think about that?
Yeah, especially when I'm like, hey, I'm not even, this joke is not pulling its own weight in the sense of being funny enough that it justifies.
It justifies the darkness.
So a lot of the time I'm just like, hey,
Oh.
this is just plain disturbing and
For the
not
sake
even
of it,
funny.
yeah.
And that's the part that makes me like
That's what
think
got you
quite
thinking.
a bit. Yeah.
So how did it make you feel when someone, you know, so we met
Yeah.
3 days ago.
Yeah.
How did it feel when someone that you hardly knew
Yeah.
got at something that you had already thought about as something that like was that maybe you had insecurity about, or you felt like
Yeah.
set you apart from others?
First of all, I found it very surprising because of how quickly you locked onto that pattern. And the fact that you said it like you knew that it was a consistent pattern, not
Yeah.
just a noisy fluctuation. And you just said it. You just like put your finger on something that I was like, oh, fuck. And then it got me back to thinking, I was like, damn, I feel suddenly more naked and exposed.
You see, you're like seen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh, May verbalize this part, but she's probably picking up this
That
so
might
many
not be the
things
only
like
thing,
all
yeah.
the time.
Right.
And I was like, oh no, what else have I? And but that it didn't go to the what else so much.
Right.
But it did start making me feel, because I didn't actually feel like you were saying it just to make me feel bad.
No, not at
Otherwise,
all.
I would not even have texted you about it.
Yeah.
It just got me into a like kind of mode of introspection.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, something that's true is like I like May, and I want May to like me.
Yes.
And I wonder if there's a part of this, which, you know, like you said, the holding tightly, holding lightly. Plus,
yes.
I'm not going to try and change myself just because I want May to like me.
Right.
But if this is a general phenomenon where I'm making needlessly violent statements and it's just making everything worse and not making anyone feel like any funnier about the world, then I was like, did May verbalize this because it just reached her threshold of like, come on, Neil, like, you know, are people suffering through my jokes? And
Yeah.
so I went into this whole thought
You
tunnel.
spun a bit about it.
And I was like, I think I just want to tell her how I'm feeling
Sure.
right now, because it might make for... First of all, it helped me stop thinking about it.
To let it out.
Yeah.
So just to
Yeah.
keep everyone else aware, like after I said this to you, it was just kind of like an offhand comment, and you took it. I didn't recognize that it had stuck for you, and we were just out on the beach. But then after everyone went home,
We watched the lunar eclipse.
We watched the whole blood moon. I actually stayed out alone and watched the blood moon end after everyone had gone. But you texted me during that time while I was out there alone with an apology is not right, but a recognition that it had impacted you, and you wanted to explain yourself a little bit and say
I was like, hey, man, I feel bad. I've been feeling bad about this.
and then it made you reflect on yourself. So anyways, you can continue with what you were saying.
Not much more to say about it, but I really kind of felt like at that point the right thing for me to, because this is kind of like a closely guarded part of me that I'm kind of defensive about.
Yes.
And I feel that in this particular case, I'm close enough to feeling like it's safe for me to
share,
acknowledge that
Yes.
this is how I'm feeling.
Absolutely.
That I wanted to take that chance and say, hey, Neil, you've never gotten across this point of just feeling bad about it and actually expressing it. And I feel like if I express it, then from this point on, whenever this comes up, I'm going to be on like a slightly more
farther.
advanced stage.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's exactly the case, right? Like you've pushed your boundary of what's comfortable and what you're used to.
Yeah.
And you feel, I mean, it sounds like, and I hope this is the case, that you felt like I was a safe person.
Yeah.
That like, even though it did feel a little bit like a critique, that you could engage about it with me, and you would be held lightly and comfortingly and cared for in that engagement.
Yeah. And
I,
if nothing else, I immediately stopped feeling bad about it.
Yeah, you moved on.
But then my mind moved on to maybe some other dilemmas, but at least it's a more evolved.
Sure.
Yeah, one of those was like, man, what am I doing just sending this big kind of like intimately revealing thing to a person that I just met a couple days ago? Is this going to be weird? I was like, this is, I think, close enough to a probabilistic representation of being like, this is, I think, probably okay that I'm just going to send it, you know?
No, you didn't like fall into a blithering mess. You just addressed it.
Yeah.
So I think I'm glad that you brought this up, actually, because I think it's a fantastic example of why my past partner called me a brain ninja.
Yeah.
Because it's just like it was so sudden for you, and it caused all of this motion inside of you, right?
Yeah.
And I hope that most of that motion turns out to be positive.
Yeah.
But actually, I think unfortunately, a lot of the things that are good for us feel bad at first.
Yeah.
They're hard and they hurt. Like when you go to the gym, that shit sucks.
Yeah.
But eventually, you get better at moving, and it gets easier, and you feel better overall. And so I think for me, I've always kind of wrestled with this balance of like, I see the ways that people hurt themselves. It's so clear to me. Like I feel like I'm just like looking into them. And I can see the way that they hurt themselves or they hurt others or, what have you. And I want to help them. I want to help them see it and give them a perspective, but I don't want to hurt them. And I don't want to put them through needless pain. And actually, most of all, I think I had a reckoning at some point with myself where I thought, who am I to decide what the right way for them to be is? How can I say that I'm having this objective viewpoint when really it's just what I think the right way to be is? And so trying to find that line of like helping people to heal and giving them a safe place to be witnessed in the ways that they have yet to grow, without making it feel like I'm taking some moral high ground or some ethical high ground on them, where like I just think I'm better, and like who gives me the right to make this commentary because they didn't ask me for it, and I think a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but there's one thought in my mind that says like one extreme that you could take it to is like you never have that right unless it was asked for. You can't give unasked for feedback. It's never right to overstep that boundary. Yeah. And the other perspective, which I think is what a younger version of me took more often, was if it makes them better in the end, if they end up happier because I made them struggle, then it was worth it, And so I'm going to only try to do the things that I think are actually going to be worth it.
Yeah.
And it's I don't have
in
the
the
answer.
Buddhist precepts, they say, speak only that which is both true and helpful.
I love it. It's true. That's much more succinct than what I was getting at, but it's pretty much the point of like what I wrestled with of like, where's the line between unnecessary commentary and imposing my viewpoint on others and giving someone something that really benefits them and that really helps them to see who they are, and I think there's a function of how familiar and safe you are with that person and how much freedom you get to cause them that pain, because it's like if I met you for 5 minutes, actually sometimes those 5-minute interactions are the least painful, because if someone bonks you on the back of the head because you're being an ass or you're being rude or whatever, like it doesn't feel as personal because you don't know that person at all, but you've gotten that feedback. So there's like, it's almost this weird, like there's a very high point at the beginning of a relationship, but then once you're building a relationship, you have to be more careful.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the security in the relationship to give those strong commentary without like hurting your relationship or hurting that person.
It's like a weird U-shaped curve.
Yeah,
and when the
it
security
is.
builds, it can go back into
Yeah.
just attacking the person.
sometimes the people who know you the least
You're like,
can
hey,
make
I don't know. You might not remember that I only attacked you in this way in our first 5 minutes of conversation. I haven't talked about this in the
But actually, I've got a
subsequent
bunch
5
of
months,
more
but I
ways.
fucking hate you.
Whoa. I would never.
Now that I love you, I can tell you, I fucking hate you. You know?
Honestly, that's kind of what relationships are like. Like,
Yeah.
I like you so much, I can tell you that I can't stand you. But I'm gonna keep coming back because I like you more than I can't stand you.
Yeah.
You're
That's
stuck
true.
with me.
That's true.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think that's something that I feel a lot of resolve about now. Like, I feel like I'm at a much better place with that kind of thing. You know, I think I feel a lot like a therapist a lot of the time for people. I like feeling like a therapist, and I don't want to like force that on people, but I like it when people come to me, you know, and they want my help. They want a safe space to be seen and heard, because it is so easy for me to see and hear people. Like, you say something to me and I'm like, I get you, I love you, I see you, and sometimes that's all people need, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes they need someone to be hard on them while they love them, and do that in a kind way. And you know, I could argue back and forth what the like true right way to do it is, but I don't think there is one. And so, you know, I would rather be wrong sometimes with the chance of being right and contributing positively to the world and the people around me, than be so afraid of being wrong that I refuse to do good.
Yeah.
You know, so I kind of err on the side of, again, you know, trying to say what is true and helpful, and doing it with compassion. And I get better at it the farther that I go into my life.
Yeah.
And it's good practice. You know, I had to fail at it, and I failed at it sometimes, and people would come to me and say, the way that you failed at it here really hurt. You know, and then it was like, okay, and I learned from that, and I try not to hurt like that more in the future. So you get like it's like learning any skill or any hobby. You know, you just get more nuance, you get better, and it becomes more intuitive for you to do it the right way.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me and May today in the Room of Lives. In the next and last part of my conversation with her, we talk about nonverbal communication.